We live in a world where noise is constant, whether it's the hum of everyday life, the rush of conversations, or the urgency of our own thoughts. Silence can often feel like a rarity, yet there is incredible power in silence, especially in moments when we choose not to speak. Silence isn't just the absence of words, it's a strategic choice, a choice that demands discipline, awareness, and strength. Today, I want to explore 5 situations where choosing silence can serve you and those around you in profound ways. When emotions are running high, the desire to speak or react can be overwhelming. It's in these moments that our feelings cloud our judgment, making it easy to say things we don't mean or act impulsively. Anger, frustration, sadness, these emotions can surge up unexpectedly, and when they do, they often compel us to speak in ways that we might regret later. But here's the thing, in those critical moments, silence is not a sign of weakness. It's a powerful act of self-control and emotional intelligence. We've all been there. Someone says something that irritates us, and before we even realize it, we've fired back with a response. Or perhaps we've experienced a situation where we felt unjustly treated and the urge to defend ourselves rises quickly. Our thoughts start racing and the words begin to form in our minds before we even take a breath. This is natural. Human nature, in fact, often makes us feel like we need to respond immediately, to assert ourselves and defend our stance. But the real power comes in choosing not to react immediately, in choosing silence. Silence in the face of intense emotion allows us to regain control over ourselves. It gives us a moment to pause, to reflect, and to distance ourselves from the rawness of our immediate feelings. It's in this brief pause that we can gather our thoughts and assess the situation with a clearer mind. When we remain silent, we are not surrendering to the situation or conceding defeat. Instead, we are giving ourselves the time and space needed to decide how we want to respond, rather than simply reacting. Think about the times when we've spoken out of anger. The words may have come from a place of genuine hurt, but they were also fueled by an intense emotional reaction. In the heat of the moment, we may have said things we didn't mean, or perhaps our tone was harsh and hurtful. Once those words are out, they can't be taken back. They have the potential to damage relationships, tarnish reputations, and create misunderstandings. And yet, if we had chosen to remain silent, we would have allowed ourselves the opportunity to process our emotions first, rather than unleashing them in a way that could cause more harm than good. The beauty of silence in these situations is that it gives us the chance to act intentionally rather than impulsively. When we speak or act from a place of intense emotion, we risk saying things that are influenced by those emotions rather than reason. Silence, on the other hand, allows us to let the emotional storm pass, giving way to a calmer, more thoughtful approach. When we speak after a moment of silence, we can be more deliberate with our words, ensuring that they are not driven by anger, frustration, or any other overwhelming emotion. Moreover, silence in the midst of heightened emotions also has the potential to de-escalate a tense situation. Imagine a scenario where 2 people are in an argument, both speaking over each other, trying to get their points across. If one person chooses to remain silent, instead of contributing to the noise and chaos, it can create a shift in the dynamic. The silence creates space, allowing the other person to realize the futility of their own angry words. It can provide the opportunity for reflection, reducing the intensity of the confrontation. In this way, silence can actually be a tool for conflict resolution, not by silencing the other person, but by removing the fuel that keeps the fire burning. In addition to benefiting others, silence also benefits ourselves. It provides us with the mental clarity to assess the situation more objectively. When emotions run high, it's easy to get caught up in the narrative we've built in our heads, a narrative of being wronged, of being misunderstood, or of being treated unfairly. Silence allows us to step back and consider other perspectives, perhaps even realizing that the situation isn't as dire as it initially seemed. It helps us avoid the trap of allowing our emotions to dictate our perceptions of reality. Ultimately, silence in the face of heightened emotions is an act of emotional maturity. It's about choosing to be in control of your reactions, understanding that how we respond in these moments says more about our character than the situation itself. It's about resisting the temptation to immediately speak and instead using that silence to reflect, regain composure, and respond thoughtfully. By mastering this skill, we can prevent our emotions from dictating our actions and instead create space for constructive communication and personal growth. In a world where information is constantly flowing, it's easy to feel like we must always have an opinion, always be ready to speak, or always be the first to respond. In reality, however, the most effective responses often come when we acknowledge that we don't have all the facts. It's in those moments where the best choice is to remain silent, to pause, gather more information, and refrain from speaking prematurely. Silence in these situations is not a sign of indecision or weakness. It is, in fact, a demonstration of wisdom, humility, and discernment. We've all encountered situations where we've heard part of a story or been given a piece of information that immediately triggers a reaction. It could be a rumor, a news snippet, or even an incomplete account of an event that seems to demand an opinion. But what happens when we speak without the full picture? We risk misunderstanding the situation, making assumptions, or even damaging relationships. Without a complete understanding, our response might be misinformed or misguided, which can cause more harm than good. Choosing silence in these situations reflects a deep understanding of our own limitation. None of us can claim to know everything, and pretending we do only sets us up for mistakes. Silence offers us a moment to acknowledge that we don't have all the details, and that's perfectly okay. It allows us to step back and recognize that judgment should not be made hastily or based on fragmented information. By withholding our opinion until we have a more comprehensive understanding, we ensure that our words are more thoughtful, measured, and accurate. Consider the workplace, for example. You might overhear a conversation or receive partial information about a project. It's easy to jump to conclusions and offer suggestions or criticisms without knowing the full scope of the task at hand. If you speak before understanding the bigger picture, your advice may miss the mark entirely, or worse, it could create confusion or tension. In these cases, taking a moment of silence to gather the facts allows you to form a more informed, relevant, and helpful response. It shows that you value the complexity of the situation and are committed to offering meaningful input. Similarly, in relationships, jumping to conclusions based on incomplete information can lead to misunderstandings. When someone shares something with you, you might only hear part of the story. Your partner, a friend, or a colleague might express frustration without explaining the full context. If you react immediately based on what you think is happening, you could inadvertently make the situation worse. By choosing silence, you give yourself time to listen carefully, ask questions, and gain a clearer understanding before responding. This not only strengthens your communication, but it also shows that you respect the other person's perspective and are invested in finding the truth. Moreover, silence allows us the space to process information, especially when we're dealing with emotionally charged situations. When we don't have the full picture, emotions can cloud our judgment, leading us to make snap decisions or responses that may not be aligned with the reality of the situation. By holding back our immediate response, we give ourselves the time to regulate our emotions, think critically, and consider the many factors that might be at play. Silence also prevents us from becoming a source of misinformation. In today's digital age where rumors and half-truths can spread quickly, it's tempting to contribute to conversations based on the little information we have. However, by speaking without having the full picture, we run the risk of perpetuating false narratives or misleading others. Silence in this context is a way to avoid contributing to the noise and instead prioritize accuracy, truth, and thoughtful consideration. In some cases, silence can also protect us from unnecessary conflict. In discussions where we don't know all the details, asserting an opinion or taking a side too quickly can escalate tension. When we remain silent, we avoid jumping into a debate or argument that we don't fully understand. This silence doesn't imply passivity or indifference. It's a strategic decision to stay out of a conversation until we can engage meaningfully and contribute in a way that reflects our true understanding. Choosing silence when we don't have the full picture requires humility. It is an acknowledgement that we as individuals are not infallible and that the world is more complex than it often appears. It's about showing restraint and wisdom, understanding that forming an opinion or offering a solution without full knowledge can do more harm than good. Ultimately, silence is an act of maturity. It allows us to listen, to learn, and to act with greater insight and purpose. By recognizing when we don't have all the information, we not only protect ourselves from missteps, but also create the conditions for deeper understanding and better decision-making. And in a world where knowledge is power, the power of silence is undeniable. Gossip and negativity are pervasive forces in both personal and professional environments. Whether it's the latest rumors circulating in the office or a casual conversation among friends, it can be tempting to join in and add your thoughts. Sometimes the pressure to be part of the conversation or to not appear detached can push us toward participating in these discussions. However, it is often wiser to remain silent when gossip or negativity is present. By doing so, we maintain our integrity, avoid contributing to the harm caused by these conversations, and ultimately set a higher standard for ourselves and others. At its core, gossip is about the sharing of information that may or may not be true, typically with the intent of discussing others behind their backs. It can take many forms. Speaking ill of someone, passing judgment on their actions or character, or even spreading unfounded rumors. Gossip often lacks context, misrepresents situations, or distorts the truth, which can lead to misunderstandings, conflict, and unnecessary drama. When we participate in gossip, we are contributing to this cycle of negativity, and in doing so, we lower the quality of our relationships and interactions. Choosing silence in these moments is an act of self-discipline. It requires us to resist the temptation to engage in behavior that may feel momentarily gratifying, but ultimately does not align with our values. Silence in the face of gossip speaks volumes about our character. It shows that we are not interested in undermining others, even when it may seem easy to join in. Instead, we are demonstrating our commitment to respect, kindness, and integrity. By staying silent, we make a conscious decision not to add fuel to a fire that could harm others. Furthermore, silence can help protect us from the negative energy that often accompanies gossip. Negativity in any form has a way of spreading. When we engage in negative conversations, we not only contribute to the toxic environment, but also allow ourselves to be influenced by it. Negative energy can be contagious, affecting our own mood, mindset, and outlook. By choosing silence, we create a barrier between ourselves and the harmful effects of negativity. It's a way of protecting our own mental and emotional well-being, ensuring that we don't internalize the negativity that others are projecting. In addition to protecting ourselves, silence can also be a way to diffuse tension. In many cases, when gossip or negativity is present, it's a reflection of underlying dissatisfaction or unresolved issues. Engaging in these conversations often perpetuates the problem rather than solving it. By staying silent, we allow the conversation to lose momentum. This can sometimes prompt others to reconsider their words or to shift the direction of the conversation towards something more constructive. Our silence may encourage others to reflect on what they're saying and whether it's contributing to a positive or negative atmosphere. Moreover, remaining silent in the face of gossip can serve as an example to others. When we refuse to participate in gossip, we set a standard for those around us. People may begin to notice that you don't engage in conversations that involve speaking ill of others, and over time, this can encourage a shift in the culture of the group. Silence, in this case, is a powerful form of leadership. It shows that we prioritize respect over judgment, positivity over negativity, and understanding over assumptions. By choosing to not engage, we encourage a healthier, more respectful dynamic in our relationships and environments. Silence also allows us to preserve our focus and energy for more meaningful and productive conversations. Instead of wasting time and energy on discussions that tear others down or spread negativity, we can invest in conversations that are constructive, uplifting, and aligned with our values. By remaining silent when gossip or negativity arises, we redirect our attention toward things that truly matter. Things that contribute to personal growth, mutual respect, and building positive connections. At times, silence may not be the easiest choice. The pressure to fit in or the desire to respond can be overwhelming. However, it's important to remember that silence is a tool for strength, not weakness. It is a conscious choice to not contribute to the harmful patterns of gossip and negativity. In fact, it is a reflection of emotional maturity, self-awareness, and a commitment to higher standards of communication and interaction. By choosing silence when gossip or negativity is present, we are not only preserving our own integrity, but also fostering a culture of respect and positivity. We create space for more meaningful interactions and ultimately protect our own well-being from the destructive effects of harmful words and energy. In a world that can often be filled with divisiveness and judgment, silence is a simple but profound way to stand apart and remain true to what truly matters. Leadership is often equated with speaking, guiding, and offering direction. We picture a leader as someone who provides clear answers, makes decisions quickly, and articulates their vision for the future. However, effective leadership is not only about speaking, it is equally about knowing when to remain silent. The ability to choose silence in key moments is one of the most powerful tools a leader can possess. Silence isn't a sign of passivity or weakness in leadership. Rather, it's a conscious choice to listen, reflect, and create space for others to grow and contribute. One of the most important ways silence benefits a leader is by allowing others to find their voice. In many organizational or team settings, people often look to their leaders for direction. However, when leaders dominate every conversation and fill every silence with their own opinions, they inadvertently stifle the creativity and input of others. When a leader chooses silence, they provide an opportunity for others to speak up, share their thoughts, and contribute ideas. This not only fosters a sense of ownership and participation among team members, but it also encourages a more diverse range of perspectives. For example, in meetings, instead of rushing to fill a pause with words, a leader who remains silent gives their team the chance to think, process, and express their viewpoints. This silence can break the pattern of leaders speaking too much and others merely responding, creating a more collaborative and dynamic environment. When people feel heard and valued, they are more likely to invest in the work, bring forward innovative ideas, and feel a sense of belonging within the group. A leader who knows when to step back and listen creates a culture where everyone's voice matters and where collaboration is not just encouraged but expected. Silence also creates space for reflection. In high-pressure situations, leaders are often expected to make decisions quickly, but great leaders know that haste can lead to mistakes. Taking a moment of silence allows them to step back, reflect, and assess the situation without being driven by urgency or emotion. This pause provides the mental space to think critically, weigh options, and make decisions with a clearer mind. Rather than reacting impulsively, a leader who values silence will pause to evaluate the full scope of a problem, consider all perspectives, and make an informed decision. Moreover, silence can be a strategic tool in conflict resolution. In tense situations when emotions run high, it's easy for conversations to escalate into arguments or misunderstandings. A leader who recognizes the power of silence can use it as a tool to de-escalate tensions. Instead of responding immediately to every heated comment or challenge, silence allows a leader to control the flow of the conversation and avoid further conflict. By staying silent, a leader shows restraint and maturity, signaling that they are not driven by emotional impulses, but are instead focused on finding a solution that benefits everyone involved. This silence can create an atmosphere where cooler heads prevail and the conversation can shift from conflict to resolution. In addition to fostering collaboration and promoting reflection, silence is an invaluable tool for self-awareness. Leaders who are constantly speaking or making decisions without pause can lose sight of their own blind spots or biases. Silence provides an opportunity for self-examination. By choosing to listen instead of speak, a leader can tune into their own thoughts, feelings, and reactions, which may be influencing their decisions more than they realize. This reflective silence helps leaders become more aware of their own strengths and areas for growth, which in turn makes them more effective at guiding and supporting others. Silence is also a way for leaders to model emotional intelligence. Great leaders understand that leadership is not about being right all the time, but about knowing how to manage emotions, both their own and those of others. Silence in moments of stress, frustration, or anger is a demonstration of emotional control. It shows that the leader is not governed by their emotions, but is instead capable of responding with thoughtfulness and intention. This kind of leadership inspires trust and respect, as team members recognize that their leader is not acting out of impulsive emotion, but is thoughtfully considering their actions before responding. Additionally, silence can help a leader cultivate humility. When a leader speaks too often, it can sometimes come across as self-centered or domineering. In contrast, choosing silence in certain situations reflects an understanding that a leader does not have all the answers. It shows humility by acknowledging that others in the group may have valuable insights or solutions. By remaining silent, a leader demonstrates that they are open to learning from others, which fosters a culture of mutual respect and continuous improvement. Ultimately, silence in leadership is about creating the right balance. It is not about withholding information or avoiding responsibility, but about knowing when silence serves a greater purpose than speaking. A leader who knows when to step back, listen, reflect, and create space for others is one who builds trust, encourages collaboration, and makes better decisions. Silence is a tool for fostering growth, both in the leader and in those they lead. By mastering the art of silence, leaders can empower their teams, make wiser decisions, and cultivate environments of innovation, trust, and respect. Practicing self-control is one of the most powerful skills we can develop, yet it is often one of the most difficult to master. Self-control isn't just about restraining ourselves in the moment, it's about creating the capacity to think before we act, to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, and to remain grounded even when emotions or circumstances might push us toward rash decisions. In situations where our emotions are triggered or our impulses are strong, silence becomes a tool that can help us maintain our composure, avoid regrettable actions, and stay aligned with our long-term goals. There are countless moments in life when we feel the urge to speak or act out of instinct, whether in a confrontation, during a stressful event, or when we're faced with an opportunity that tempts us to act impulsively. For example, when we are criticized or challenged, our immediate instinct may be to defend ourselves, retaliate, or prove that we are right. Similarly, when we feel the pressure of stress, frustration, or excitement, our first reaction might be to speak without thinking or take actions we later regret. It's in these moments that silence becomes a crucial ally in practicing self-control. Choosing silence doesn't mean suppressing emotions or avoiding difficult conversations. Instead, it's about recognizing that reacting without thinking can lead to negative outcomes, both for ourselves and others. Silence allows us to pause, gather our thoughts, and regulate our emotions before responding. This is where self-control begins, in the space between the impulse to react and the choice to respond in a more deliberate, thoughtful way. When we practice silence in moments of emotional intensity, we give ourselves the time to process what is happening internally. It is easy to get swept up in a moment of anger, anxiety, or excitement, but silence allows us to step back and assess the situation without being driven by our emotions. By taking a breath, stepping away from the immediate pressure of the moment, we can examine what is at stake, what our true feelings are, and what the best course of action might be. This moment of silence helps us break the automatic cycle of emotional reactivity, and instead, we can choose a response that aligns with our values and long-term interests. The power of silence in practicing self-control also lies in its ability to reduce the chances of saying something we'll regret. How often have we blurted out words in anger or frustration, only to realize later that they caused unnecessary harm? Words are powerful, and once spoken, they cannot be taken back. When we choose to remain silent, we protect ourselves from saying something impulsively that could damage relationships, create misunderstandings, or escalate conflict. Silence allows us to hold back, and in doing so, we give ourselves the opportunity to think carefully about what we want to communicate and whether it is necessary, kind, and helpful. Self-control through silence also helps us maintain focus on our long-term goals. It's easy to get caught up in the moment, to act out of frustration, to speak impulsively in a difficult situation, or to get sidetracked by distractions. But when we practice silence, we give ourselves the space to remember the bigger picture. In moments of stress or difficulty, staying silent allows us to reconnect with our deeper motivations, our core values, and our long-term objective. Instead of acting in ways that might temporarily relieve tension but create long-term setbacks, we choose a response that keeps us aligned with what really matters. Another aspect of self-control that silence enhances is the ability to listen. It's hard to listen fully when we are caught up in our own reactions or preparing our next response. By remaining silent, we can tune in more effectively to what others are saying and gain a better understanding of their perspectives. This practice of active listening not only helps in communication, but it also helps us regulate our own emotional state. When we listen instead of speaking, we shift our focus from our own impulses to the needs and feelings of others, which fosters empathy, connection, and better decision-making. Silence can also act as a form of emotional regulation. When we feel overwhelmed by strong emotions, such as frustration, sadness, or excitement, silence allows us to process these feelings without acting on them immediately. It helps us avoid the emotional flooding that can come with a sudden outburst or unconsidered action. By stepping back and embracing silence, we can prevent those emotions from controlling us, allowing our rational minds to take the lead in responding in a more composed and thoughtful manner. In the context of personal growth, practicing self-control through silence can help us develop greater emotional resilience. Each time we choose to stay silent rather than react impulsively, we strengthen our ability to manage our emotions and make decisions that serve our best interests. Over time, this ability to control ourselves becomes a habit, and the more we practice it, the more natural it becomes. The discipline of choosing silence in moments of emotional intensity becomes a tool that empowers us to respond with calmness, clarity, and intentionality, regardless of the external pressures we face. Ultimately, practicing self-control through silence is a form of personal empowerment. It allows us to respond in ways that align with our values, protect our relationships, and enhance our long-term well-being.